The IT industry was shaken with news that Qualcomm was thinking of buying Intel, which may or may not happen. We also saw the Kioxia IPO pushed off. We saw a lot of announcements made at Dreamforce, news that Commvault is buying Clumio and Veeam is buying Alcion, and a warning from CISA not to use certain outdated software. Plus, we're seeing some really interesting stuff coming out from IBM on quantum computing. All that and more on this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, where each time we meet, we run down the IT news of the week with a variable degree of snarkiness. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett, sitting in for my good friend Tom Hollingsworth, who is on assignment with a special Tech Field Day event with Nokia. Joining me this week as my co-host is Mr. Bob Suter of the Futurum Group. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, I didn't know we got to be snarky. You didn't prep me on that part, but I'm all in for that.
Absolutely. I think that I think our audience would be disappointed if you weren't, and looking forward to it. So today is National Daughter Day, and it's also Better Breakfast Day. So what do you have for breakfast with any daughters that you may or may not have?
Well, I happen to have my prop here, which for those of you from the generalized New York area, Entenmann's Donuts. And for me, it's the sugar ones and the sugar cinnamon ones. I never knew who would eat the plain ones, but Stephen, evidently you like those.
It's me. I like the plain ones. In fact, I like those best of all three of those flavors. And growing up in the New England area, Entenmann's was our choice. But my daughters actually prefer Pop-Tarts. And thankfully, they cook them before eating them.
That is good. That doesn't always happen, but
doesn't always happen, indeed.
No.
So let's take a look at some of the news stories this week, Bob. Quantum is exploring a potential acquisition of Intel, if you can believe it. This move could strengthen both companies and enhance U.S. leadership in the chip industry, but I think we're going to have some antitrust questions. Intel under Gelsinger is pursuing a strategic change to boost its competitive edge, including expanding manufacturing and investing in next-generation technologies. A successful deal would signify a real move forward for Qualcomm and a big surprise for those of us in the industry. But I think we've got a lot of questions about this news. Bob, what do you think this would make for the industry? And do you think that this is real, or is this just some kind of weird leak?
I think this is real. And frankly, something has to happen with Intel. Several weeks ago, they announced their really poor results, their poor outlook. They're laying off 15,000 people. They have to save a ton of money, right? Something radical has to change. It's not just a few Band-Aids here and there. I think Qualcomm is a very reasonable candidate. They've got a tremendous amount of momentum. For example, I was at Dell Tech World a few months ago, and there were PCs that were pure Qualcomm. You know, from the processor to the GPU to the NPU. I mean, they're in the game, right? And so Intel would certainly be an interesting acquisition. There's one other player that is coming along too, which is Apollo Capital Management. They're offering $5 billion for a stake in Intel. Now, this is not new. Previously, they had put $11 billion in for a stake in Intel Ireland. So people want Intel to keep going, first of all. And I think the Qualcomm move would be very interesting. Antitrust, yeah, you know, there's certainly big players there, and they overlap on quite a bit. Intel has to clean up their story, though, especially on the AI processors, and Qualcomm may just be the way to do it. Our next item here is about a company called Kioxia, and I may not quite have the pronunciation right. It's postponed its planned IPO, and you know, IPOs, you got to do them at the right moment. You got to maximize how much you get out of these. Previously, you discussed this on August 28th, and it's a question of achieving the target validation and a general market downturn in what's happening here. So despite the recent improvements in memory chip prices, the company's been impacted by a slump in the chip market. Let's go back to Intel, that story that we just talked about, which has delayed its IPO from 2020. So it was already 4 years later than we thought. So it's got a 14% share in the flash memory market. It remains focused on listing, but Stephen, what's really going on here with them?
But what's really going on, I think, is pretty much what you said. It's all about the dollars. We were, as I talked about on August 28th, we were expecting Kioxia to IPO and to create a new powerhouse in the flash memory market. Specifically, we were looking at this as a potential competitor for Solidigm in the enterprise space, but that's not really going to happen, at least not right now, thanks to the historic stock market collapse in Japan shortly after they made that announcement. In fact, right after they made, right around that same time, remember there was some fears about a recession in the U.S. There was an interest rate hike. Japan's stock market dropped quite a bit, double-digit percentages, and I think that that's really what this is all about. It's simply analyzing the IPO conditions and saying the time's not right to do that. We expect that they will probably come back out sometime in the future, basically when the timing of two key indices is correct. Number one, when the stock market in Japan looks a little bit more bullish, and number two, when the market for memory chips looks reasonably solid. And when that happens, I definitely do expect that Bain Capital will float Kioxia on the stock market and make some money on it. Until that happens, though, well, I guess we're going to have sort of a continuation of the status quo. At the Dreamforce conference, Salesforce introduced Agentforce, a suite of AI-powered agents designed to streamline application development and improve customer experience across industries. The platform's low-code AI tools, new partnerships, and enhanced AI models aim to drive adoption of these autonomous agents, helping businesses automate the tasks and unlock the full potential of their data. By integrating AI more deeply across its ecosystem, Salesforce seeks to differentiate its offering and support customers in modernizing applications and operations, and of course, achieving that always familiar target of a higher ROI. Now, our good friend Keith Kirkpatrick from the Futurum Group was at Dreamforce and has some thoughts on this. Keith, what do you think of all the announcements?
Thanks, guys. So yeah, I was over at the Salesforce Dreamforce conference, which took place in San Francisco, and there was really a lot of news coming out of that event. One of the big stories, of course, is Salesforce's launch of its new Agentforce suite. Now, Agentforce is this collection of autonomous AI-powered agents. This is really sort of an extension or an expansion of the capabilities of its Einstein Copilot functionality that it had rolled out last year. Really, what we're talking about here are intelligent agents that are powered by AI that are really designed to accomplish specific tasks. So when we talk about specific tasks, we're talking about, instead of just say using a copilot to say help you draft an email or create a marketing letter, what they're really talking about is deploying generative AI to do specific things that need to be done, whether it's within the context of the Commerce Cloud or Marketing Cloud or Sales Cloud. Basically, all of the little tasks that are involved in a process, such as reaching out to a lead or changing pricing on an e-commerce website. All the things that take a lot of time for humans to do, but really are able to be done by AI. Why? Because there is usually some sort of a framework built in, and there's also data that the organization holds within its own ERP, which in this instance would be Data Cloud. And basically what the deal is you've got these AI agents that are able to go out, get the relevant data, and then complete a specific task without human intervention. Now, at this point, the way Salesforce is positioning these is that they are autonomous, AI powered, but there's still a human in the loop or available in the loop to make sure that they're doing what they're doing, and also to really kind of, help customers gain more confidence that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think that the most interesting thing about this, of course, is that there's just the pace of innovation. If you think back to a year and a half ago, we weren't even talking about generative AI, and here we are kind of in the second wave of generative AI, moving from copilots, which were these assistants, to now Agentforce. Now, I find it very interesting that if we think about Agentforce, that's obviously Salesforce's branding around agents, but of course a lot of the other large SaaS players as well are rolling these out. HubSpot is doing it, Oracle is doing it. So really, there are a bunch of companies out there that are kind of jumping on this trend of deploying generative AI agents that are again, focused on very, very specific tasks and using AI to do that autonomously with the goal of ultimately trying to reduce friction, improve efficiency, improve productivity, and really improve the consistency of experience for both their in-person workforce as well as for their end customers. Now, the other thing that was really interesting about this whole conference is that Salesforce really has been kind of leaning into this idea of making their entire platform very easy to use wherever the particular user is most comfortable in interacting with the application. So while a lot of their customers are going to simply use Salesforce, the actual Salesforce CRM application, others may want to interact with that data within different applications. So for example, Slack, that's their collaboration platform where people can come together to basically use as a project management system and really collaborate on different projects and so forth. Well, what they're trying to do is integrate not only data from these other applications like Salesforce or like a partner application like Workday, but also allow agents to go out, find relevant data and pull that back in through, let's say, Slack. So essentially, it's allowing users to interact with and engage with data where they feel most comfortable and where it makes the most sense for them. So I think that's pretty interesting, because if you look at the complexity of today's tech stack, where I think there's an average of something like 13, the average organization has something like 13 user-facing applications. Nobody wants to have to kind of alt-tab their way through different applications to get their work done. They want to be able to interact with information wherever they might happen to be working at that particular moment. And this AI integration from Salesforce is helping folks do that in a very sort of elegant way. Now, of course, one thing I also just alluded to there that was pretty interesting is that Salesforce has also announced a number of additional external partners that are designed to really help drive the adoption of Agentforce and AI agents outside of their little Salesforce ecosystem or Salesforce platform. So right now, I believe at launch, they announced several extension partners, Amazon Web Services, Box, Google Cloud, IBM, Workday, and Zoom, I believe are the initial companies through which they have established partnerships allowing AI agents to essentially go out, access data held in those particular applications, and then act upon it within Salesforce. That's really important given the fact that even though a lot of these vendors would love it if enterprises would standardize on their platform and their platform alone, that is just not the way work is done in today's modern enterprise. There's almost always several different applications in use at any one time, as well as various data lakes and lake houses that are used to house data from different parts of the organization. So it's important for these agents to be able to access all of that to get the most value. And then, of course, the other kind of announcement that seemed to me to slip under the radar a little bit here is Salesforce announced something called Salesforce Foundations. What that is, I think Mark Benioff basically said it's a freemium model that they're moving to. So essentially, if you're a customer at the enterprise level or above, you can actually get all of the entire Salesforce platform available to you essentially on a freemium basis, where you can have access to I believe it's a limited number of Salesforce Agentforce credits to let you, as that user, access AI agents across the entire platform. So no matter what application you're using, you're able to weave those agents in and out. And the idea is that in order to take advantage or to get the most benefit of these AI agents, you have to let them interact with and see all of the data held within your organization through all of the different various functional areas, from sales to marketing to commerce, what have you. Now, the goal here, obviously, from Salesforce's perspective, is to get folks hooked on that Salesforce platform as well as on agents themselves. Now, in terms of pricing, they have said that these agents are going to be priced on a consumption basis, meaning almost on a per interaction uh, model. Now, an interaction does not mean like a one-way or even a two-way conversation, like as a customer, interact with an agent when I'm trying to return an item. No, that's not how they're looking at it. They're looking at as an interaction as a complete workflow, essentially ensuring that if I were to, let's say, want to return an item of clothing to a retailer and I have to go back and forth several times, that would be a single interaction. They're not trying to nickel and dime folks or their customers when it comes to these agents because they want them to see value here. And I think the pricing initially was set up as it's going to average about $2 per interaction and downward, meaning that as the volume increases, the actual per interaction price will decrease. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And of course, most importantly, it'll be very interesting to see how well these agents perform in the real world outside of demo land, which is what we saw a lot of at the event. So again, really looking forward to seeing how this whole agent force plays out over the next several months. Thanks, and back to you guys.
Well, thanks a lot, Keith. I really appreciate that coverage.
All right. Well, in the first of two security announcements we're going to talk about today is Commvault just announced its acquisition of Clumio, which is an AWS data protection specialist that you've previously discussed here on the rundown. The acquisition enhances Commvault's cyber resilience capabilities for cloud-native applications, and certainly people are moving more and more of them there, and allows the company to leverage Clumio's innovations, including rapid access to Amazon S3 data. Again, more data is moving to the cloud during critical recovery operations, expanding its offerings for AWS-based businesses. Clumio's expertise in protecting these complex data sets will now reach a global scale through Commvault's platform. Global scale here. Stephen, you're attending Commvault's, I have to pronounce this correctly, Commvault's Shift Roadshow in London in 2 weeks. So what do you expect to hear there?
Well, I expect to hear a lot about this, that's for sure. So just a little bit of background here. Clumio was founded by Pujan Kumar, who is a friend of Field Day. He was at VMware. He was a co-founder of Pernix Data, which was a tech Field Day hero. And then he went to work at Nutanix for a little bit before founding Clumio. So basically, this is somebody that we know pretty well, that we very much respect. And they had built Clumio into a pretty clever little solution here for companies with cloud-based data. Essentially, it is a cloud-first data protection and security specialist. And as you mentioned, they've done a really fantastic job working with Amazon Web Services and integrating with AWS S3. So our friends over at Commvault, led by their CEO, Sanjay Mirchandani, who is another sharp cookie, has decided to snap this thing up. I imagine that Clumio, basically, despite the best efforts of Mr. Kumar, was just not quite big enough and not quite taking off enough for his investors to be satisfied. And this gives them the payout that they were looking for. But more importantly, it leverages the incredible technology that they've put together for a really broad set of customers. As we talked about recently, the data protection market is really being shaken up with Commvault, with Veeam, with Rubrik and Cohesity, and all these companies really attacking this market with not just financial and business moves, but more importantly, technology moves. And that's what I look for in announcements like this. I think this is a great move. Commvault has rapidly shifted from being more of an old school data protection company into being a real cloud first mover. And that was going to be the subject of Commvault Shift no matter what. But now, when I'm at Commvault Shift on October 8th and 9th, I will definitely expect to hear a whole lot about SaaS data protection, about Amazon Web Services, and about next generation applications. So good on you, Commvault, a really sharp acquisition. I hope that you enjoy this new environment, Pujan, and the rest of the Clumio staff. I think you'll like what Commvault is putting together. And I urge you to tune in for Commvault Shift. Just go to commvault.com/shift and you can register and attend that session virtually. In a non-surprising move, CISA has made a statement telling customers to move off of a specific version of a cloud services appliance they've been using for a long time. Ivanti's Cloud Services 4.6 is an outdated version, sure, but it's not being updated, and there has been another security exploit to this cloud services platform.
Mhm.
Now, CISA is always on top of trying to keep customers up to date and keep customers protected from exploits. But it's interesting that this time they're telling customers specifically just don't use this outdated and no longer supported cloud services platform. Bob, you know a lot
Mhm.
about CISA. Tell us a little bit more about how they're trying to protect customers and protect the industry.
Well, I think, yeah, this is kind of an obvious move, right? I mean, here for people who are using this product, there are clear security problems with it. It's not going to be updated. Somebody has to tell you maybe to get moving and to upgrade here. CISA, for those of you who don't know, is in fact part of the U.S. government. It stands for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And so they're the part of the government that looks after these major threats that have been announced. And so you have to think of it as having a very broad umbrella. In some cases, like this with Ivanti, and they've had some problems before, they'll go in and give very specific recommendations. But they'll also make some very, very major moves. And here, I'm going to talk about quantum computing a little bit later here. But I want to remind folks that in mid-August, under CISA, under the National Science Foundation, there were new post-quantum cryptography standards introduced, 3 of them, because there is a potential chance that quantum computers will get big enough and powerful enough to break several forms of current encryption. So this is something, it's going to take years for people to implement them. It's a global program. So CISA is a great watchdog, really, for all of us, both in this very, very large sense of all encryption, moving people to new forms, as well as these, let's say, somewhat smaller movements, somewhat more obvious movements of saying, this product not going to be upgraded, move to it right away. All right, our next announcement, which is also another acquisition. It's a busy week for security and acquisitions here. So Veeam announced that they are acquiring Alcion. Alcion has focused on SaaS backups since they were founded way back in 2022. Way back two years ago, but time moves quickly. Veeam has led an investment round. They had led an investment round for Alcion in 2023. And they also acquired Qiskit, which was a startup that had been previously founded by Alcion founders. I guess if you like the team, you go for it more than once. In addition to the acquisition, Niraj Tolia will move into the vacant CTO role at Veeam to help guide the integration between all the products. Stephen, it sounds like they actually know these folks, know the products really well. What can you add to this?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. We've been focusing quite a lot on Veeam and Alcion and the general enterprise data protection market because there seems to be so much action there. And it's also such an important product for customers. So it comes as no surprise that Veeam is going to be acquiring Alcion. After all, they acquired Qiskit, which was founded by pretty much the same group, including Niraj Tolia. And this is a real burgeoning part of the enterprise data protection market. Moving to protect data in the cloud, SaaS data is really increasingly important, as we discussed earlier in this show with Commvault, as well as we talked previously when we discussed sort of the shakeups in the enterprise data protection market. Now, as noted, Veeam is the #1 provider of enterprise data protection for now. But with Veritas and Cohesity connecting, it looks like they might soon be bumped back off that #1 spot. So we would not be at all surprised to see Veeam stepping on the gas with more investment, more technology, and importantly, better products that address the way that customers are deploying applications in the cloud today to try to retake that spot. And it's nice to see that they will be giving Niraj a CTO role. He's a very, very sharp guy, and we expect great things from them. So, man, we've got a great market heating up here with enterprise data protection, with great new SaaS capabilities. And I think that the real winner is customers who will be able to better protect their data and be prepared for cyber attacks. Now, it's a real pleasure to have you here on the Rundown, Bob. Those of you who don't know, Bob specializes in quantum as well as AI and modern chipsets here at Futurum. And we've had a recent announcement as well from IBM on the quantum space. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb here to say, Bob, that you're probably one of the people most well suited to give us some perspective on quantum generally and IBM's moves in quantum in particular. So tell us a little bit more about the announcement and about the general market.
Sure. Well, just like security, data security, these other topics, acquisitions, quantum is heating up as well. Now, I will say, I have to admit, quantum computing, there's an awful lot of hype around it. It's a very technical subject. It's a way of computing that's completely different from classical computing. We don't deal with just these little simple zeros and ones. We have to get much more complicated. But it is the way, in some sense, that nature computes, right? With quantum mechanics, physics. So it's a topic that sometimes excites people, but then they drop down a level and say, "Oh, this is way too complicated." But really, it's an evolving field. So IBM had two announcements that they made last week. They did it under the umbrella or the timing with the IEEE Quantum Week, which was held in Montreal. There's been a series of quantum conferences the last few weeks. There was that one. There's the Quantum World Congress, which was held in Washington, D.C. And there was also one last week in New York City, the HPC plus AI Wall Street Conference, which I spoke about quantum as well. So it's a little bit smaller community, but very, very active. So the first of two announcements concerns software development. Now, if you've ever coded, your tools are very important to you. Your programming language is very important to you. And you start writing some code, and then you run it. And then what comes next? You fix it. And then you run it again, and then you fix it. And you're combining different libraries and things like this. Well, the same is true with quantum here. IBM Qiskit, that's Qiskit, and it's pronounced different ways. I pronounce it Qiskit. Some people pronounce it Qiskit, whatever it is. It is a quantum software development kit that runs on Python. So if you're a Python programmer, you can start programming using quantum computers. But one of the things now that we're starting to move into the area where we're dealing with larger problems and the quantum computers themselves are getting larger, the tools have to improve. If you're only dealing with small problems, the brute force method works okay. But once the problems get bigger, you start to see, well, they really slow down. Right, they take a long time to do the very basic things. So IBM has been improving Qiskit quite a bit. They've been converting a lot of the underlying code to Rust. Rust is a very fast, efficient systems language. Again, for those of you who are into coding, it's a far more modern version of C, let's say, for low level. So they're improving the infrastructure, they're improving the algorithms. They said, hey, okay, now let's test ourselves compared to all the rest of the other ones that are out there. Now, of course, they've been testing all along, but they decided to tell the world. They are much faster than Ticket from Quantinuum. They are much faster than Amazon Bracket. They are much faster than Google Circ. In fact, Google Circ, a software development environment, couldn't even complete most of the 1,000 tests. So from the software development world, I think they threw down the gauntlet and said, look, we're really number one here, but I expect a response. Second announcement, and I suspect IBM won't like my saying this, is they're putting up almost like an app store for quantum applications. So where do quantum things run? Well, they run on quantum computers, which could be on-prem, but more likely they're in the cloud. So you would send an application over. You'd like to be able to use some third-party code, highly optimized code, to make your application run much faster. This is very common, for example, classically. So IBM has introduced something called Qiskit runtime functions, and they've brought in a number of third parties. Some are very low-level applications, but some are also chemistry and things like this. Now, most of our IT readers won't be, or listeners won't be thinking so much about chemistry, but this is probably going to be the first area where quantum computing really comes through, that we start seeing some real applications. So I think we're starting to shift. We're starting to see this movement from lots of small applications, toy applications, to IBM and others with their tools getting much, much more serious.
Well, it's really interesting because what you're describing actually sounds an awful lot like what we see from some of the companies in the cloud and especially the AI space, where they're realizing that the quality of the software and the development kit really is the deciding factor, not only in terms of basic system performance, but also in terms, more importantly, of developer adoption. And certainly in the cloud space, the embrace of third-party libraries and open source software and third-party modules and functions has rapidly pushed forward the development of technologies like Kubernetes and, of course, Linux. And we are, again, it sounds to me like IBM is aiming to do the same thing for quantum. Is that what you're seeing here? Are IBM trying to become, I guess, the red hat of quantum?
Well, that certainly was a model from the very beginning. And another example maybe is CUDA from NVIDIA. That is the default development environment for doing these sorts of problems. You mentioned AI. Quantum and AI often come up in the same conversation. I like to joke, well, if you have both buzzwords in your proposal or in your company, you're twice as likely to get funding or that grant or something like that. Quantum for AI is a ways off. I think it's a research topic, but we're starting to see some interesting results. 2 weeks ago at Quantum World Congress, Microsoft had some really major announcements about the integration of high performance computing, quantum, and AI. Now, not all smushed together, but separated out. Because when you're doing anything, and people who build IT infrastructure or cloud application knows that it's a workflow. Now, where's the data coming in? Where is it being processed? What happens then? It's a sequence of events. People are understanding much better now which parts are quantum, what are the tools, as we discussed, and also what are the high performance libraries that they need. They're teasing this apart. So Microsoft very nicely showed that there was a place in this particular application, which again was chemistry, where they did high performance computing. Then they generated some data using quantum computing. They then took that as classical data and fed it into machine learning, an AI application as well. And they were able to get much better results than they had seen classically. So it's going down a level or two. You're seeing this with IBM, you're seeing it with Microsoft, and this is really important. This is moving us away from this first stage of experimentation into really starting to get serious with quantum computing.
It is really an interesting topic, and I really appreciate you sharing your insight on this with the Rundown team. We'll definitely be following up with you in the future to track the sort of, as you said, under the radar, quiet improvements in quantum and the ways in which quantum is impacting cloud software as well as AI, as you mentioned. And I really appreciate you bringing that perspective to the Rundown audience.
Thank you. It's well, I love the topic. I wrote a book about it, so I'm pretty optimistic.
Excellent. Well, thanks so very much for joining us as our co-host of the Rundown this week. Before we go, let's take a look at some of the things that are going on in the weeks ahead. First up, I want to point out that we have posted all the video from AI Field Day 5 and Edge Field Day 3, So head over to YouTube/Tech Field Day to see those videos, including a large number of Ignite talks from our Field Day delegates on a variety of different subjects. Very, very cool stuff, and really cool to hear from our independent technical folks who ordinarily are just answering and asking questions around the table. We're also excited to announce that we just wrapped up our Networking Field Day exclusive event with Nokia, and we'll be publishing video of that really, really soon. Next up, though, next week, we've got AI Data Infrastructure Field Day. So I'll be out there in California, and we'll hear from Google Cloud, HPE, Infinidat, MinIO, Pure Storage, and Solidigm. Then October 16th, we've got a Security Field Day returning. You'll see Tom talking to companies like Citrix, Dell, DigiCert, and SonicWall. And October 23rd and 24th, we're back with Cloud Field Day, led by Alistair Cook of the Tech Field Day community. A number of companies are signing up for that now. I can say right now that Cumulo and VMware will be there, but you'll see some more announcements soon. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. You can catch new episodes every Wednesday as a YouTube video on your favorite podcast application or on TechStrong TV, our partner channel. You can often catch us as well on other TechStrong and Futurum Group programs, including most Tuesdays on the TechStrong Gang. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk about all of the IT news from the week that was. Until then, for myself, for our usual co-host, Tom Hollingsworth, for Dr. Bob Suter, and the rest of us here in the Futurum Group family, here's wishing you and yours a sparkling quantum day.